So welcome to the next episode of Discipline, Desire, and Dedication. My name is Dakota Lang, and today I have a very special guest with me, Mr. Donald Watson. So a guy that has been around the racing industry for a long time. And, man, I'm super blessed to be able to have this conversation with you.
Well,
thank you so much for coming on.
Well, it's good to be here.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. So, Mr. Donald, I just walked up on you as you were backing out your car. You've been racing for a long time. How long have you been racing for?
Well, I didn't start racing until I was 36 years old.
Can we fix this? There we go. There you go. All right, there we go.
I didn't start racing until I was 36 years old, and I'm 80 years old now.
Okay. And you're from Baton Rouge?
No, I'm originally from the northern part of the state, around Rayville, Delhi.
Okay. So, and that's north of Louisiana?
That's North Louisiana.
North
Yes.
Louisiana. So you own the track in Baton Rouge Raceway. Kind of talk me through of how you got involved in all that. You've been owning it for a long time. Kind of talk about that.
Well, I didn't get involved in racing till I started helping someone with a race car. And I started doing that when I was probably 19 years old. And I worked with Jay Gonzalez in asphalt racing on a local scene, started helping him and going to the races with him. My profession is a mechanic, a diesel mechanic.
Okay.
And it's just turned into something I enjoyed doing. It's a challenge, racing is. And dedication and work ethics has a lot to do with your life. And I started helping him and worked with him till I was probably about 36 years old or 35 years old. He was driving the car, and I wound up having a little bit of money involved in the car, and we built the car along with friends.
And what time frame is this?
This is early 79, 80 range.
Okay, 79, 80.
In that range there.
And how old are you at this time?
I started out when I was 19.
19.
I was in my late 20s at that time.
Okay.
And I helped him up through that period. Wasn't involved in dirt. It was strictly asphalt what we were doing. We was racing at Jackson, Mississippi, Mobile, and Pensacola.
Okay.
And
you're a diesel mechanic at the time. Is that what you said?
yes.
Diesel mechanic. So
Right.
y'all got he had a car,
He had a car, and
and then kind of y'all just started building a race team between both of
not
you?
really. I was just helping him to start
Helping
with.
hand.
And this was before what you call having a race team. This was just a hobby.
Mhm.
And really, that's all it was back then. It was doing it on the weekends, but you worked all weekend
Right.
to go do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that up till, like I say, I was in the 35, and he was driving a race car at that time, and he had come down with some health issues,
Okay.
and wasn't physically able to drive the car anymore. And he finally just says, I'm getting out of the car. Here it is. It's yours.
Mhm.
I had money in the car. He just gave me everything.
Right.
And from that point on, I started driving.
And this is when you're 35,
36.
36. At this time, did you own Baton Rouge Raceway?
No.
No. Okay. So
I was asphalt racing.
asphalt racing, still asphalt racing.
Yes.
Okay. So you're going through that. You took over the car.
Yes.
How long did you race that car for?
Probably 3 years.
3 years.
Raced at Jackson, Mobile, Pensacola.
And what type of car was it?
It was a Chevelle.
A Chevelle. And as far as, was that like bracket racing that y'all
No,
were doing, or
this
heads
is
up?
circle track,
Circle track. Okay.
like Mobile, Pensacola,
Uh huh.
Jackson, Mississippi. There was asphalt tracks at all these places.
Okay.
There was a 5/8 mile racetrack at the time in Baton Rouge, but it was extremely too big for its time.
Huh.
What I mean.
Okay.
And
what kind of motor were y'all running in that car?
Chevrolet 350.
Chevrolet 350. Was it like it just run what you brung type deal, or did y'all have like different classes with like stock class?
You had different classes back then. You had like a 6-cylinder class. You'd have a V8 class, and you still had classes that you raced in.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean.
Yeah, and whenever y'all would go, so y'all do those races. Y'all did that for when did you eventually get into the dirt car racing?
Well, I actually left asphalt racing due to the fact I didn't have the help that you needed to do pit stops when you would be running a 200-lap race. And it got to the point of racers, and I'm not criticizing what was going on back in that time. Bobby Allison, Davey Allison, Rusty Wallace, Mark Martin, they were all racing short track stuff at that time. And they started on a 200-lap race, they started changing tires every 25 laps. Well, I didn't have the sources to help me, and I just couldn't. I decided, we've got to do something else.
Right.
I had a friend at that time that was helping us on asphalt that had went to dirt racing, and some of friends that I had from the asphalt side of it were dirt racers at the time. And I left and come to dirt racing with an asphalt car. And just converted it over to dirt.
Because it's still the same circle track?
It was still circle track.
Just on dirt?
It was just on dirt.
Just on dirt.
Right.
So, okay. So
and at the time, I was racing, when I come to dirt, I would race dirt on one night. I'd go still asphalt race on the short track on a weekly show program in Mobile on a Saturday night. The local track in Baton Rouge at the time was a Friday night track. I didn't own the track at that time, but I'd race dirt on Friday night and I'd go race asphalt on Saturday night.
And were y'all doing this every single weekend?
Every weekend.
Every weekend.
Right.
And I'm assuming that y'all are running like a point system, maybe?
No. Back in those days, there was no point system.
No point system.
No point system.
So y'all just ran,
You got paid, well, on the dirt side of it back then, $350 to win. Fifth, you only was paid 5 spots.
5 spots.
And the 5th spot was $15 or $20.
$15 or $20.
Right.
Right. That's crazy, isn't it?
Well, yes.
Times have changed.
A lot.
Oh, I could only imagine what you're saying, coming up through the ranks, especially. I love how, because your car right now, I've seen you run at Baton Rouge and it's very impressive, right? But before I get into that, because I do want to get into your time as far as, driving the late model and stuff like that. But you go through, you're racing Friday night on dirt, Saturday night on asphalt, right? You started driving it when you were 36. So you take over the car, right? You're doing the dirt and the asphalt. You keep going through that. When do eventually, I'm assuming you just said, okay, we're just going to stick 100% to the dirt instead of the asphalt?
Yes.
Okay. What made that decision?
Well, the asphalt races were so far away. And then the weekly show programs were dying off. And they was running more short track 200-lap races, what I mean. And when you didn't have the help, you just didn't, it wasn't good to go to those type races. So I decided to go
Is
into
that is that
into the dirt side of it.
when you say that, is that because I know when you said earlier you were talking about, it used to be a hobby and then it turned into a racing team. Is that kind of what you mean by that? Whenever you're doing those 200 lap race and these people are changing their tires every 20 laps?
Well, I was doing it as a hobby, and they're doing it as a profession.
Right.
There's a difference
Oh
there.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh no, 100%.
they were doing it for their living
Mm-hmm.
at that time. Well, they still did.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby and Davy and Freddie Fryer and all of them, that was their physical living. My living was my diesel business.
Mm-hmm. And so you're still working
I'm going
5 days a week.
I'm going to work every day.
Friday night racing on the dirt, Saturday night on the asphalt.
Right. It's been many a night I'd come back from Jackson, Mississippi at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the telephone would be rung that Exxon wanted a mechanic on this barge, and I would go straight on and work at the barge that night. I mean, that's
Straight, no sleep,
no sleep.
just straight went and did it.
Well, that was my business. That was my livelihood.
Didn't have a choice.
Yes.
Hey, let's kind of talk about that, man. Because that was your foundation, right? That was when you really, it sounds like you started really diving into the racing industry. But talk about like the grit that you had to have, especially racing dirt on Friday night and then asphalt on Saturday night, and then still, like you said, sometimes have to go straight home and get straight back to work. How did you stay motivated, even to keep racing?
Well, racing, don't take me wrong when I say this.
Mm-hmm.
There's an adrenaline rush from racing. I could probably get higher on that adrenaline rush than if you were drunk
Mm-hmm.
or on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It is a drug within itself
Right.
that self-satisfaction
Mm-hmm.
in doing what you're doing and doing it well. And that racing is no different from any job. Take pride in what you're doing and do the job well. And that's been my philosophy in life.
Yeah. And so you go through that, and then when do you take over Baton Rouge Raceway?
Well, I actually took it over. I think I physically purchased it in 87.
87.
But I actually leased it for 2 years prior to, because the promoter or the owner was trying to sell it to me at the time, and I wouldn't buy it because he didn't actually own the land. He was wanting to only sell what was built on the land. So unless I could own the land to know what I'm buying, it wasn't a good investment.
Right.
And so I leased it for 2 years, and in that same time, the land come up for sale, and I purchased it. But also right in that same time, me and a couple of other friends of mine were looking at that time in building a racetrack.
Okay.
What I mean, now we were already looking at property in certain spots,
Mm-hmm.
and it just
Timing.
it worked out that he was going out, and I wound up buying the racetrack. So the friends that I had that we were looking to be together in a racetrack, I wound up being by myself.
Right. I'm gonna get into that a little bit too. But what would you say that you made a better decision by taking over a racetrack rather than building one from the bottom up?
Looking back from today to then, yes.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot more about what goes on today. Then we didn't think really didn't have everything thought out. Let's
Right.
put it that way.
Kind of just winging it.
Winging.
And whenever that property did come up, were y'all looking in that same area, or was?
Well, we had looked in two different areas. What I mean, we had looked in Clinton. We'd looked at a piece of property there, and we would look at Livingston, Louisiana. What I mean, there was a piece of property right off the interstate there that was owned 27 acres that me and this friend had walked and pretty much decided that's probably where we wanted to be at.
Mhm.
What I mean, but we just never
never
pulled the trigger on it
Mhm.
and said, hey, we want to purchase this piece of property.
Right. And that's crazy. My uncle's the chief of Livingston, the town of Livingston.
Well, it was right off Livingston. Wallace Heck. I don't mean to be calling names.
Oh no, you're good.
But
he can edit all that out.
there was a big flea market right there on the left, and it's right across from the waste thing.
The waste management.
Yeah,
area?
on one side of the
Mhm.
road, and there's a subdivision there now.
Right.
What I mean.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything.
Absolutely.
But that's where we were looking at the property.
That's interesting. And so, 86, correct? Or
That's
86?
probably right. Yes.
86. So 86 when you took over Baton Rouge Raceway.
I purchased it. I think I call it in '87. I probably run it
87.
in '85 and '86
Mhm.
as far as a lease.
Okay, and then you found, but you were already running the program, and then you
Right.
eventually just owned the property.
On the property. And then,
Wow.
then I started updating everything from that time on.
Mm-hmm. Talk about so you own the property, right? You're running the program. Talk about one of your biggest achievements as a racetrack owner. What would you say your biggest achievement is?
Well, let me back up and say something.
Yep.
As me being the owner, this is not about me.
Yep.
This is a family-run business. It's not a one-man run operation. This could have never happened without my family or my wife and my children working at this. And they come along because of my desire, not necessarily because of their desire.
Talk about that. So how many kids do you have?
I have two daughters.
2 daughters. Okay.
Right.
And so you have 2 daughters. Are they into the dirt track racing or not really? Kind of not really their partake?
Both of them tried to drive
Yeah.
some. One of them was excellent at it. But as far as loving it, they didn't.
Didn't really love it.
They did it because of
You?
I could supply them with a car that was capable of winning. And,
Yeah, and they probably enjoyed doing that with you as well.
I reckon.
Yeah, that's it. And do they still to this day? Do they come around the dirt track or not really?
They work at the racetrack every Friday night.
Every Friday night.
Right. My
That-
wife does too.
That is amazing.
Yes.
And they've been doing that since you
Since
took up
87.
87. That's incredible.
Well, you had to have family come in and run this operation. I say run this operation. You got to watch who's controlling and working with your money. And I learned that real quick when I was leasing the racetrack.
Okay. And you're still running a diesel mechanic shop at the same time of this?
Yes, I still go to work every day.
Right. So you still but now you own another business, which is the racetrack. Right?
Well, but you can call that a business,
Mm-hmm.
but never at no point did my livelihood come from a racetrack.
Oh yeah, I could only imagine it. Yeah.
Did we take what we made in a certain era?
Mm-hmm.
My living wasn't from the racetrack.
Right. But the hours that you put into that racetrack is pretty much, it makes it a business.
Well, yes.
I mean, how many on average? How many hours do you think you put on in a week at that racetrack? I could only imagine.
It depends on the event you're working at,
Mm-hmm.
but at least 35 hours
I believe it.
without, and it may be more than that on
Mhm.
certain weeks.
Oh, I believe it. And so let's backtrack a little bit. So we're in 85, 86, you lease it. 87, you buy the property.
Right.
You start doing this. What you're doing the weekly racing, right?
Yes, I took over as it was and was doing weekly racing.
Doing the weekly racing, and then what would you say is the biggest transition from back whenever was what was your car count? What would be the car count on a Friday night in the 90s?
Car counts were not that high back in that era. People
Huh.
might think they were, but they might only be 40 to 50 cars total on a weekly show program amongst 3 classes of cars.
Right.
That's in any racetrack back in this geographical area back then. There was racetracks very frequent. There was one at Angie, there was one at Rouge,
Yep.
one at Forest Hill,
Yes.
down in the southern part of the state.
So
Then-
whenever and to talk on that, so you have multiple racetracks that are racing. And what would you say that radius of on mileage wise? What? 100
at
miles?
that time, within 100 miles. Well, Rouge was your closest to the Baton Rouge area. Your next closest was in Forest Hill, which was around Alexander.
Okay.
What I mean,
So how, as a track owner, how do you keep your car count and obviously your car count high for your spectators that are coming in, competing with other tracks that may be racing on the same night?
well, at that time we was always a Friday night racetrack. No other racetrack in the state run on Friday night. They always were a Saturday night racetrack.
Huh.
But I was in a metropolitan area where most of the other racetracks was in rural areas of the state, which give you I had a little better draw on Friday night due to my population in the Baton Rouge area, where when you get into the more rural areas, like we'll say right here, this track was not here at the time I started. It was the population of people
Right.
stood a better chance to travel on Saturday night to come to these type tracks
Rather than
than
where you were
the
in Baton Rouge.
area. And it remained a Friday night. I'm still on Friday night
You're still on Friday. That's
now.
correct. Yeah.
What I mean, but
Go ahead.
it would be better if it was on Saturday night sometime. But we stay on Friday night due to my family not tying up their whole weekend.
Yep. And it does. Me personally, I like the Friday night races. Because like you said, we used to race. Whenever I grew up as a kid, my parents used to race in the AMRA, horseshoe mud racing.
Yeah.
And Remy Baker,
Yes.
right? Remy Baker, he was kind of like a father figure to me. Second father coming up, doing the horseshoe racing and stuff like that. And we used to travel to Twin City,
Right.
Panther Swamp, and all those races were on Sundays.
Right.
So we would wake up and we would drive, me and my mom, my dad, and we would drive 3.5 hours, 4 hours to Monroe, and we would get down there. We'd start racing at 12. Races end around 6, and then, right back down to Denham Springs we go, and then it wore us out. It wore my parents out because they work. We're in the sun all day, mud racing. Then you come home, you're absolutely whipped, and then you got to wake up Monday morning and go to work.
That's right.
So the Friday night races, I really do enjoy them. I think me personally, just from doing the Sunday races, I think it's very beneficial.
Yeah. Well, you can do the mud racing during the daytime.
Yeah. Yeah. What? Tell me that. Why do most of the dirt car or the dirt racing industry is always at night rather than the day?
Well, the change with your son. You cannot prepare a racetrack and have it stay together without and control the dust in this geographical area due to the sunlight and the heat. You need nighttime cover and no sun in order to accomplish this. What I mean?
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Your track will stay together if you prepared it correctly and provide a better racing service. I basically try to start my program when the sun gets underneath the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime the sun is above the trees, your track will deteriorate very quickly. What I mean.
That is interesting. I never knew that. So, and so throughout your ownership of Baton Rouge Raceway, and I've seen you, you're running the track and you raced on the same night. Is that something that you've done all the way through your career, or is that just like every now and then you do it? How does that?
I've done that throughout my career.
That is impressive.
But it
probably takes a lot of people to help you do that.
Yes, and I don't physically consider myself racing at my own facility on the same level as I would if I'm racing at some other location.
Okay.
Because there's no physical way you can do what I'm doing at the racetrack and then go jump in a race car and drive it car and be competitive. And when I say be competitive, in the right frame of mind to drive that race car as to other drivers that's all they're doing.
Right. Their mindset is fully focused on.
Theirs is that. My mindset is on the racetrack and what's going on around me all the time and what can I do to make this better. Or if I happen to go get in the car at a particular time and all of a sudden they've stopped the race for a red light, I'm worried about wondering what has happened at this point. So you're in a different mindset. So I'm not in the same mindset racing at my racetrack as I would be here.
Right, like tonight.
Right.
And it's because you run a very, I've been to your racetrack many a times, as a child a couple times, and especially as we've gotten this car. How is that, as far as like your people that help you run your organization, is it usually the same people that come back every year, or do you have a lot of turnover with the people that come, or is it kind of like, I know you said both of your daughters and your wife have been helping you for, decades, but what about the others?
The basic group of people that work with me have been for me for a while. Mm-hmm. Now, we've had some turnover in, say, announcers or people that work in the tower and stuff like that, but most of my people have been with me for a while.
And as the leader that you are, right, running that organization, what do you say is one thing? What is something that you try to focus on whenever you running an operation like that, as being a leader, to making sure everybody's
Well, like I said, it's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
It's my wife. She does one portion of a racetrack. There's many jobs at the racetrack that has to be done, and it's not about what happens on race night. It's what happens prior to race night.
Right.
The average person don't know the behind the scenes of what goes on before you get to the racetrack.
I could only imagine.
Let's say we've got 100 cars at the track. We've got 6 classes of cars. I'm just using that hypothetically.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. We've got 100 people that we're going to be paying money to that night. We have a breakdown as to how much we're going to be paying them. All of that is calculated, figured, worked up in envelopes. This class here is here. This class is here. You can't do all that on just Friday night. Stuff all these envelopes and have them ready at the end of the race and do what you have to do. So it's not just what I do.
Mm-hmm.
When I said family, I mean daughter's running the concession stand, seeing the stuff is ordered and there for Friday night. Basically what I do at the racetrack, I do everything from the fence to the pit area, the grounds. My wife and my family run everything from the stand side up.
Huh.
And that's basically how it's done.
And y'all been doing that for years.
Yes.
Everybody has their own little
And everything
specific
has
duty.
to balance. There's these armbands, there's a starting number, an ending number.
Yeah.
All that balances with my wife at the end of the night. Money has to be worked out.
That,
it's just like any business.
and it don't stop even after the race. I could
no,
only
it
imagine.
does not stop after the race.
Yeah,
What I mean.
because you do it every single week.
Right. You come back home, you start over again.
Yeah.
And then if you go through a rain out, it is total chaos.
It's more of a headache for you than the racers.
Yes.
I could only imagine.
Because you got this many armbands out,
Yeah.
you need to come back in the next week, keeping up with it.
Making sure everybody got their money
Right.
situated.
You're not
Yeah.
trying to take anything
Take
from
anybody.
them, but
You're right.
you want to do what's
And that's
right.
that's one thing that I just from as me growing as a person and especially respecting what you do, running an operation like this that we get to come and enjoy. And a lot of things that I think that a lot of racers don't realize is that, and this is no disrespect to any racer out there, right? But you see some of these people, because, well, let me backtrack. So whenever I was a kid and my parents used to do dirt drag racing, when Remy Baker owned that track in Jonesville, Louisiana.
Right. I know Remy well.
Yeah.
My brother did the same type of racing that Remy did.
Okay, perfect.
In the northern part of the state.
Yep. So Remy used to own a racetrack in Jonesville with David McMillan and Austin Butler.
Right.
And I was probably 10 years old, man. And they literally gave me full control over the brackets. I used to be the one out there lining everybody up. That was my job, right? And as the kid that I was, right, I was 10 years old. I don't remember my exact age, but it was somewhere around there, 10 to 14. And, racers used to get mad at me, get pissed off and think that it's in my control. Hey, I'm putting you on the clock. You got 3 minutes. And I'm a 14-year-old kid telling these grown men this. And then at 3-minute mark, if you're not at the line, it's time to go. You lost, And what a lot of people don't realize is you have to keep the program going, right? You can't stop for anybody individually. And at the end of the day, you don't get none of the praise, but you get all the blame.
That's
right?
correct. It hadn't changed.
Yeah.
And you have to make a decision then and live with it, and to keep the program running.
Yeah.
And you asked at one point, why did I want to get into the racing business? At the time when I went into it, and I'm going to make this statement, I thought as me being a racer at that time, I could answer the questions for all the racers and give them what they wanted. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Because you will never satisfy all the racers.
And would that be what you say is the biggest challenge as an owner of a racetrack? Is trying to make everybody as happy as possible?
That's correct. And you're going to have people that are continuous problem makers, and you have to deal with that problem. And outsiders looking in look like you're picking on certain ones, but no, the ones that give you the most problems, and when I say this, that's at any racetrack.
Right.
They want to know, well, why me? Well, I'm going to be watching you closer because of the past history. Because I know your characteristics. So I might be watching you closer than I'm watching somebody that's never caused me a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So
Track record.
it's your track record
Mm-hmm.
and how you deal with other people or race other people.
Right.
What I mean.
Right. Yeah.
As me being a racer, there's certain people you learn that you can race with, and there's other people you have to watch. And when it comes up to it, you finally develop a mutual understanding between racers as to what you can get away with and what you cannot get away with.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean.
Right.
That's when it's good.
Right.
Let's put it that way. Everybody rolls over, does what he has to do on the racetrack, but can come back to the pits and be friends next week.
Right. Right. What would, maybe I'm just going to ask this question like this, is just what makes you get up and keep doing it where you are today, at your age? What makes you get up and keep running a racetrack, keep, getting in your car? Because you still drive your car, correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. And how old are you again, Mr. Donald?
I'm 80 years old.
80 years old, still driving a late model race car. Very impressive. What makes you keep doing that over and over again?
Self-satisfaction to know I can do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't, there's never been, I use this word, there's no such word as can't in my vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
It's not acceptable. We're going to try it.
Yeah.
Put forth effort.
Right.
And I've had extremely good health in my life.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean, to be able to do what I'm doing and work the hours a week that I do. What I
Mhm.
mean.
Yeah, and you're still doing that at 80 years old.
Yes, every day.
What time do you get up in the morning?
I don't get up that early, but I stay up extremely late.
Stay up. Yeah, you're more of a night owl.
I'm at Baton Rouge Diesel around 8:30 in the morning.
8:30.
Yeah.
And even whenever you get home, you're still working on race car or racing stuff and all that.
Well, I don't work on racing as much as what I used to.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm either working there or either I'll leave the place of business sometime, go to the racetrack, and
Do you feel like
and that's my outlet, to be perfectly honest. I love being in the open atmosphere. When I'm on the motor grader or the tractor, there's no telephone bothering me.
and that's what I was gonna say. Do you think maybe what keeps you going is just that staying active? Constantly having something that you have to constantly put your energy into.
Probably does.
Because
I've seen too many people that
without Baton Rouge, if Donald Watson is not at Baton Rouge Raceway, then it's not even going to feel the same. You know what I mean? Because you've been there since '86,
Right.
'85. You've been there for decades, and your legacy is on that place.
right. If you look at all the racetracks in a 250-mile radius, there ain't but one that's had the same owner.
And that's yours.
That's mine.
That's very impressive.
And the others that had either multiple owners or either not in existence.
Mm-hmm. And why do you think?
Because most people, and I will say this, and they've come back and told me this through the years,
Mm-hmm.
that decided they wanted to be in racing business. And they went and purchased racetracks. And I tried to tell them that they think you're making money hands over fist,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not.
Yeah.
Now, there was a time that you made some money in the racing industry. I was able to do this and pay for my facility. I borrowed a lot of money when I bought this thing, and I didn't have good sense when I did that. But with the help of my family and not having to take money out of the racetrack for my living or my family, we were able to pay for the place. And that's where everybody makes the mistake in the racetrack industry, that you've got to, this is not something you're going to make enough to live out of.
Right.
Most of the time, they're not going to work that hard and lose money. And that's what goes on with it.
What is the biggest event that you've ever held?
Well, I started a series in 1990 for the late model cars. And that was full-blown late models. And the reason I started it was because of the expense to the racetrack. Back then, they were beginning to drop off the upper end of the classes because of the expense to the racer. What I mean, afford, and then the racers were dropping out of owning cars because of the expense of the cars.
Okay.
And I started a series just like the Super Series.
Mm-hmm.
I started it in 1990. We had approximately 17 cars left within the state, late model cars. And I went off racing up in Missouri one time, and I looked at what a racer was doing in that geographical area. And I come back and I said, well, we can do the same thing in our area to keep racing alive.
Mm-hmm.
And one weekend I happened to be at a closing show, kind of like what this is here this weekend. And I sat down with those 17 drivers and I said, if I put this together, will y'all support me? What I mean, if I go to this racetrack and say, hey, when we come, I'll bring you this many cars. Because the racetrack needs cars for the people that's in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
And back in that era, you couldn't get them all at one spot at one time, no matter what you paid. And I sat with those drivers, and then I went to 3 racetracks. I said, if I can put this program together with 15 shows, and we would race Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all in one weekend. Friday night at Baton Rouge, Saturday night at Forest Hill, and then maybe Boot Hill. Then we would actually rotate, and everybody would shift their Friday, Saturday, Sunday, where everybody wasn't, because one of the shows is not going to be as good as the other,
right,
where we treated the racetracks the same.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I put that together between 3 racetracks, and that's how I started the series to run that. And we started it. I went and hired 3 people to help me run the program that was already in racing. And we started booking shows, and then it just grew. And I got sponsors to help. The tire companies would help back then because I knew some people to talk to, and the manufacturers come out and helped, and I put a point fund together for them, which they had never had, because most of the time in that era back then, if you didn't finish the race, you didn't get one dime. So I more or less become a booking agent or representative for the racer. That's basically what I was.
Right.
And we started booking shows, and we built this all the way up through the 90s, up into the 90s, and we averaged back in that era in our geographical area, we run approximately 36 shows a year at different racetracks in the Southeast. Mm-hmm. And we would average 36 cars for that year. We'd seen 54 late models at Boot Hill. When we come to Pike County here and run shows, there would be 50 something full-blown late model cars.
Right. And how long did you run that organization?
We run it from 1990 up to 2000 and probably 8.
2008.
And then I shut it down due to expenses
Other
and the
projects.
changing of times of cars. And nobody wanted to. The racer didn't want to listen to what I was telling them. And when I say telling them, we had to make a change because the racetracks could no longer afford what we were doing, and our car expense had got so expensive.
What do you feel like is the and we'll kind of wrap up after this, but what do you feel like is the biggest challenge to get spectators to a racetrack, you know, as a business owner, a racetrack owner?
In today's era, I don't know the total answer to that. And in the older days, it was not as hard because it was not as much or many things to do. Now you can sit and watch a race on television if you're a race fan and be in air conditioned and watch it. That hurts to a certain extent.
Yeah, it has its pros and its cons.
It's got its pros and cons.
Right.
Yeah, the streaming of this helps generate money back into racing in that aspect, but it hurts the fan base side of it on the other side. Biggest thing, you got to have a real entertaining program to try to get the spectator out anymore, and that's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Well,
I think
good talking with you.
It was great talking with you. I think it's very impressive. A lot of people don't understand, and I don't even understand completely. I've never owned a racetrack myself, but to run that racetrack for that long of a period of time, like you said, you're 1 in 250 miles radius, to still have the same owner for what would that be now? 86, so 96.
40-something years.
Yeah, 40-something years. You know what I mean? And to keep doing the same thing and consistency. You know, you stay consistent with it, and like I said, Baton Rouge Raceway wouldn't be anything without you. And I know that every memory that I have over there, I'm very grateful for it. And I know especially these guys here, you know, Darian, and the time that we get to spend over there is very powerful.
Well, I appreciate everybody being there.
Oh, yeah.
I plan on still being there.
That's
for
it.
An extended long period of time.
Exactly. Well, is there anything maybe you'd want to shout out your daughters or your wife and anybody in the racing industry, or you got any last words you'd like to say? Maybe any entrepreneurs out there, you know?
Well, I'd like to thank everybody that's helped me get through this long period of time.
Yeah.
And I could not have done this without a lot of loyal racers to make this happen.
Right.
What I mean. And I appreciate all the fans that come to racetrack, Baton Rouge Raceway, through the years, and most of the people in the 80s that were my loyal fans are not here anymore. But the biggest thing I see today, and when you talk about fans, there used to be 2 or 3 racers that would come to Baton Rouge that when they showed up at the racetrack, I could say there's 50 people.
Right.
You don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest difference I see is, and you don't have it because there's so many other things that for them people that did come to do as the young people come up.
Right. That makes sense. That's impressive. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Mr. Donald. And y'all got a Facebook page, Baton Rouge Raceway.
Yes. My daughters and them take care of that.
Yeah.
I'm not of the technology.
I hear you. Well, hey, y'all make sure to go check them out on YouTube. I know I've looked up some. They got some stuff on YouTube at Baton Rouge Raceway. Go check them out. And if you ever, are in Baton Rouge, make sure you go right over there. It's a lot of great memories at Baton Rouge Raceway. So we appreciate you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you next time.
All right. Thank you.